Hello, dear community. Um, I have the great privilege of sharing the Dharma today for this final assignment. But before we get started with that, let's check our motivation, right? In our tradition, in the Plum Village tradition, we typically, do 3 bells and ground ourselves in the present moment. But being that it's a video for a class, that might be a little clunky, so we'll kind of just check our motivation for the time being and our attention. And for myself, being the presenter, kind of just want to be a good vessel for the Dharma, right? Keep Dion out of it, and give this teaching, give this teaching, the attention and the attention it deserves. So for yourself, what you could do is just whether it's to ease your own suffering, kind of just taking taking the Dharma with a clear mind to ease your own suffering, or if you're on the Bodhisattva path, taking the Dharma so you could be of benefit to others. So just having a clear, open mind, open heart to take it in. So let's just do that for a moment before we begin. Thank you, and let's begin. So we've been given an assignment in this, final class for our presenter training. We've been given an assignment of presenting the second noble truth of the Four Noble Truths. The second noble truth builds on the first noble truth, that the Buddha, when he came to his realization of enlightenment, he realized these four truths. And the first one was being that, conditioned existence is heavily comprised or primarily comprised of suffering. I would say primarily comprised and heavily. It's called dukkha, and it's a kind of dissatisfaction. And the second noble truth builds upon that, that first truth of suffering, and it speaks on as to why we suffer. And the second noble truth basically goes on to explain that, the reason why we suffer is due to our craving, the various cravings we have throughout life. And it's not necessarily the externals that we're reacting to. We're reacting to the changes that occur throughout our experience, and that's what's causing suffering. Craving is described as grasping for what is pleasant. So you have like your sense pleasures, and that could be food, it could be anything that just engages with our senses. Our eye sense, our nose sense, our ear sense, our tongue sense. So you have food for the tongue. You have pleasant smells. You have music. You have, for the eyes, anything that's aesthetically pleasing. And it's like tactile sensations. These are what we cling to. So the issue with clinging to these things, and the first noble truth touches on this, is it's all impermanent, and it goes through this constant. Everything in conditioned existence goes through changes, right? Nothing is permanent. So it's these changes and our reaction to these changes that make us suffer. Uh, there's a few ways to touch on, you know, the second noble truth, and there's the traditional sense, and then there's kind of the secular sense, and I'll touch on both of them. But starting with the more traditional sense, craving is what leads to our rebirth. So the Buddha very clearly explains in his teachings that, you know, we've been going through different lives for eons and eons through different realms of existence, through hell realms, lower realms, heavenly realms, earth realm, animal realms, and it's our craving that keeps us trapped into this cycle. And when we begin to get an understanding and to get a handle on this craving, we start to see the pathway out of this craving and out of this cycle. So the traditional, again, the traditional view subscribes to this idea, and you know, our karmas are basically what causes this, and it's our actions of our body, speech, and mind lead our mind stream to be born in these various realms. So if you have good actions of body, speech, and mind, and you're kind of craving more wholesome things in a sense, you can be born in higher realms. And if you're craving, if your actions of body, speech, and mind are, you know, unwholesome, you're gonna land yourself in a precarious situation in a lower realm. And we kind of see this. You can kind of see this in a practical sense in real life, to where you have something like Skid Row in LA, which is a sort of hell realm, and people's, you know, unfortunate karma to land in homelessness, and then a craving to ease their suffering may get them into drug use, and it's just a downward spiral more into that hell realm. And then, you, in a practical sense, if you have the fortunate karma to just have like good ethics and discipline, and you do stuff that's more conducive to a positive life, you end up in home ownership in a good neighborhood with a good job and a good family, and that's kind of more of a, it's a better situation. I wouldn't necessarily say it's a heavenly realm, but that's just a, you know, a more practical example of how our karmas and our actions of our body, speech, and mind lead us to fortunate or unfortunate situations. And then they can kind of just build on each other. So typically, and you can come out of a hell realm, right? People change their lives around all the time. These aren't permanent states. But in that despair, people typically just get caught up more. And, you know, people that lead good lives, they go on to continue to lead good lives. But people fall from good to bad, and people rise from bad to good. So these are not permanent states, and you're not guaranteed to just thrive, and you're not guaranteed to just be in despair. So that's, you know, one great thing about the Dharma and, you know, Buddhism is that we have some agency. You know, once we gain some wisdom, we have some agency as to be able to get out of our circumstances and get out of our own way. So, and then a more practical sense, and I guess a more secular sense, is we change constantly and kind of take rebirths throughout the different eras in our life and different phases. So you have, you know, your adolescent phase. You move, and that has like all types of cravings where it's like toys and fun and play. Uh, but then you grow up and you move into your teenage era, and that it's a very mixed bag. You start to have maybe lustful cravings. When you older teens, um, just partying maybe for some people, drugs and alcohol. Um, it's not all that bad, but you also start to have craving towards where you would like to go as an adult, right? And a key causing condition is definitely like adults in your life may push, or we definitely do push young people to have this on their mind. What do you want to do when you get older? What do you want to be? What do you where do you want to go to college? And this creates a craving and reinforces a craving because this is where our mind streams are pointed. We're single pointed, uh, directed towards this goal of going to college or going to trade school or going to the military or so towards a certain type of career. Um, so yeah, this can create its own suffering because these goals are going to have their own troubles. But the biggest thing is, again, these are impermanent. So even moving on to once you get the job, you know, once you gain the degree, once you gain the status, this is very impermanent. It's temporary. But people attach to these things, and I've seen this firsthand in the military, where you had people with a 20 or 30-year career, and they're very attached to their status and their rank, as an officer or as like a higher enlisted, and they have status, they have cachet, and in the military, and people come to them, and they're somebody, I guess you could say, in a sense. Um, Once they retire, that all that goes away, and so people really struggle, and they might retire in their 50s and 60s, and they still have conceivably a lot of life to live. They still have decades to go, but they cling to this who they were. I'm the chief. I'm the colonel, right? And once that goes away, there's like deep loss and deep suffering because of that loss, and people can't deal with the reality of that change, and this is why we suffer. And there's a really deep irony we're craving. It's something that we all really desire, but it's also what causes us suffering. So, when you have craving towards the three types of craving, and you have sense pleasure, you have the craving for existence, and then you have the craving for non-existence. So there's specific suffering with each of those. When you have desires for sensual gratification, it's temporary. So it's like you have craving for that piece of cake, and you gain that piece of cake, and then it's done. The moment's over, and that's it. Or you have it so much that you get sick of it. It's this unsatisfactoriness that this is it's just there's always something, and it's never enough. And it's our relation to this that it causes us problems. You see people always searching for the newest iPhone or the newest smartphone, or the newest handbag or the newest whatever, and they attain it, some temporary like joy, but it's temporary. You know, it goes away, and then the next model comes out, and you're like, oh, I want that one. I want the upgrade, and it's just a never-ending cycle of that. And you kind of just have to ask yourself, do we need these things? Do we need these things to make us happy? And when you deeply look at that, the answer is no. Uh, and you know, I'll give more guidance for that later on in the talk. And then you have craving for existence. I touched on this earlier, where you have, you know, you want to attain status and things of that nature. And then there's a craving for non-existence, where people just want to kind of just check out. Um, and you know that doesn't ease your suffering either. So you know the irony is like we think when the cravings are met, we attain what we're seeking, that you know we'll be happy, and we're not. That's the rub. So so you know, in the face of all this, like I said, we have some agency, and the Buddha gave us, you know, practical teachings to take us out of this, you know, state of mind. And it's really just, uh, it's really just, you know, kind of changing your perception in a sense, and just doing some mind training in a sense, uh, to kind of change the way you relate to things, changes the way you relate to your cravings. It's even taking a deep look at why this stuff is coming up, and this is why it's good to meditate. Um, you quiet the mind, and you're not just running with your urges, and you can look at your urges. And then when you're objectively looking at your urges, you can make a more informed decision on if you want to pursue that craving or not, if it's fruitful for you or not. Uh, and it's fine to do things and enjoy things, but it's just attaching to it, and it's the clean that's the issue. And just, you know, being like a dog fed a treat, to where like you're just not in control, and you're like, I want the treat, I want the treat. You're sitting back, and you're using your intelligence to gauge, do I need that? No, I don't need that. I don't need that in this moment. It would be nice if I had it, but you know, I don't need that trip, because I need to save money to invest, or to for my emergency fund, whatever it is. You start to look at life more with more intelligence, and make more intelligent decisions. This ease suffering. You know, you live with more discipline and more ease, and you're in control, and the urges are not in control. So yeah, the practices of mindfulness just gives you the space to be able to start to gain that insight and wisdom, so where you can more deeply look at your craving. And you know, so I don't go too much over time. I already went over time a bit, but I'll leave you with, you know, training from the Interbeing book. The seventh mindfulness training, dwelling happily in the present moment. And you know, simply following this training alone will help you, you know, gain some of that, you know, agency and control, to be able to combat, you know, this ever-present craving we have. Aware that life is available only in the present moment, we are committed to training ourselves to live deeply each moment of daily life. We will try not to lose ourselves in dispersion, or be carried away by regrets about the past, worries of the future, or craving, anger, or jealousy in the present. We will practice mindful breathing to be aware of what's happening in the here and now. We are determined to learn the art of mindful living by touching the wondrous, refreshing, and healing elements that are inside and around us in all situations. In this way, we'll be able to cultivate seeds of joy, peace, love, and understanding in ourselves, thus facilitating the work and transformation and healing in our consciousness. We are aware that real happiness depends primarily on our mental attitude and not external conditions, and that we can live happily in the present moment by simply remembering that we already have more than enough conditions to be happy. And that says it all. It's very simple if we get out of our way. And the best way to get out of your way is just sit on the cushion and just be in the present moment. Thank you.